Asterisk history, we are often told, is a great, roaring river, ... The story of great men, of thunderous battles, and of empires that rise and fall like mountains. But that is not the whole truth. Asterisk history is also an ocean. Vast, deep and dark. Asterisk the true. Chronicles, the lives that truly shaped the currents, rest in the deep. They are forgotten. Not because they were small, but because they were inconvenient. Because their stories did not fit the simple narratives that future generations wanted to tell. Asterisk tonight. We are not looking for the river. We are going to the ocean. We are going to listen for one of those whispers. ... The echo of a voice that has been silent for 2.5 millennia. Asterisk a pirate, a commander. A woman who, in a world defined by the absolute power of men, became the only one a god king would trust. Asterisk this, ... is the story of Artemisia of Caria. Asterisk our story begins, not in the marble halls of Athens, or the stoic barracks of Sparta, but in a place of trade and salt. Halicarnassus. ... A city on the coast of what is now Turkey. In the 5th century BC, this was Caria. It was a kingdom of skilled sailors, shrewd merchants, and, as the Greeks would say, barbarians. Asterisk Artemisia was born into its royalty. By blood, she was half Carian and half Cretan. By marriage, she became its queen. But her husband died, leaving her not as a grieving widow, but as a regent, ruling in the name of her young son. P9 asterisk. This was not a time for a woman to rule alone. The world was on the brink of a war that would define Western civilization. The Achaemenid Empire of Persia, led by the King of Kings, Xerxes I, had amassed the largest invasion force the world had ever seen. It was coming to finish what his father Darius had started. He was coming to burn Greece to the ground. Asterisk and Halicarnassus was a vassal state of Persia. When Xerxes called, his subjects were required to answer. Asterisk, but Artemisia did not simply answer the call. She did not simply send her required ships and soldiers and stay behind, safe within her palace walls. She led them. Asterisk, she was a commander in the Persian navy, not a symbolic one. She was an admiral. She brought 5 triremes fast, brewed warship stew. The Persian fleet. They were renowned for their skill, and they were loyal to her. In the Greek world, she was already infamous. They called her a pirate, a woman who dared to command men. The Athenians were so incensed by her presence, by this affront to the natural order, that they offered a reward of 10,000 drachmas for her capture. Asterisk, it was a bounty no one would ever collect. Asterisk. The first great naval clash of the war was at Artemisium. It was a brutal, chaotic, and indecisive battle. But Artemisia distinguished herself. She fought with such tactical skill and ferocity that her name reached the ears of Xerxes himself. He began to take notice of the Carian queen. Asterisk after the Persians broke through the pass at Thermopylae where the 300 Spartans made their legendary stand, the path to Athens was open. The city was evacuated, and the Persian armies sacked it, burning the Acropolis. The Greek fleet, defeated and demoralized, retreated to the narrow straits around the island of Salamis. Asterisk the war seemed all but won. Xerxes, sitting in his new quarters in the ruins of Athens, called a council of war. He gathered all his admirals and subject kings. Asterisk should they attack the Greek fleet at Salamis and finish them. Asterisk one by one, the commanders, all of them men, all of them eager to please their king, gave their answer. Yes, they said, attack, The Greeks are trapped. Their morale is broken. We have more ships, larger ships. We will crush them. Then Xerxes turned to Artemisia. The room, we are told, fell silent. The historian Herodotus, who was himself a native of Halicarnassus, tells us what happened next. Artemisia, surrounded by the bravado of men, was the only one who spoke the truth. My king, she began, I have been second to none in courage or in deeds in this war, but I must tell you what is best for your cause. She told him not to fight. She said, the Greeks are as far superior to our men at sea as men are to women. She warned him that in the narrow straits, his larger, more numerous ships would be a liability. They would be slow, clumsy, and would foul each other, while the smaller, faster Greek triremes would run circles around them. Spare your ships, she pleaded. Do not risk a battle. She offered him a different path, a smarter one. Keep your fleet here, she advised, or even send it to blockade the coast. The Greeks at Salamis are from many different city-states. They are low on provisions. They will not stay long. They will begin to argue. They will splinter, and each will sail home to defend his own land. You will conquer Greece, one island at a time, without ever losing a ship. It was brilliant. It was logical. It was strategically sound. The other commanders were furious. They whispered to one another that this woman, who had shown such courage before, was now a coward. They were certain the king would have her executed for her dissent. Xerxes listened patiently. When she had finished, he, smiled. He dismissed the council, praising Artemisia's intelligence above all others. He called her his most trusted advisor. He said, she was the only one who truly understood the situation. And then, in the way of kings possessed by hubris, he ignored her completely. He ordered the attack. The Battle of Salamis was a catastrophe for the Persians. Just as Artemisia had predicted, the narrow straits became a death trap. The massive Persian fleet, crowded together, became an easy target. The Greeks, fighting for their homes, were relentless. Artemisia was in the thick of the chaos. Her flagship was being pursued by a relentless Athenian trireme, captained by a man named Amenias. She was fleeing, but her path was blocked. Directly in front of her was another ship. A friendly ship. A Persian allied vessel from Kalinda, commanded by its king. She was trapped. The Athenian ship was closing in. Capture, for her, meant humiliation and death. Artemisia did not panic. She did not hesitate. She made a calculation. With a cold, ruthless decision, she gave the order to turn her ship's prow and ram. She did not ram the enemy. She rammed her ally. Her warship struck the Colondan vessel amidships, tearing a hole in its hull. It sank in moments, taking its king and crew to the bottom of the sea. The Athenian captain, Amenias, saw this. He saw her, a ship with Persian markings, destroy another Persian ship. He could only come to one conclusion. She was a Greek ship in disguise, or she was a defector who had just turned on her allies. He immediately broke off the pursuit. Artemisia, now free, slipped away from the battle and sailed to safety. It was an act of pure, cold-blooded survival. But the story does not end there. On a hill overlooking the straits, King Xerxes sat on his golden throne, watching the battle unfold. When he saw Artemisia's ship charge and sink another, his scribes, assuming she had sunk an enemy vessel. Rushed to report the glorious news. Asterisk, my king. Nay said, do you see Artemisia? How well she fights. She has sunk a ship of the enemy. Asterisk Xerxes. Watching the rest of his mighty fleet being shattered, his admirals killed, his commanders fleeing. Looked on as his one female commander secured a victory. Asterisk he famously remarked to those around him, my men have become women, ... and my women men. Asterisk he had no idea she had destroyed one of his own. The move that saved her life had, through pure irony, cemented her status as his greatest and most loyal warrior. Asterisk, after the humiliating defeat, Xerxes was broken. He had lost his nerve. He called his council, but this time, he did not ask for a vote. He sent everyone away. Except Artemisia. He asked her, and her alone, what he should do. The war was not yet lost. His general, Mardonius, still commanded a vast land army. But Artemisia knew the king's will was gone. She gave him the perfect political exit. Asterisk, my king. She said, if I were you, I would go home. Asterisk, she advised him to retreat back to Persia, to protect his own throne. Leave Mardonius here with the army, she said. If he succeeds in conquering Greece, the glory will be yours. If he fails, the loss is small. He is only your slave. The Greeks will have defeated Mardonius, not Xerxes. You will be safe, and your empire will be secure. Asterisk it was, once again, the perfect advice. It saves Xerxes from all responsibility. Asterisk he trusted her so completely, ... so implicitly, that he gave her the most important task of the entire campaign. He gave her his own illegitimate sons. And he ordered her, the Cairene queen, to sail away from the war and personally escort them to safety in Ephesus. Asterisk, she was the only one he could rely on to bring his children home. Asterisk Artemisia did just that. And then she vanishes from the pages of history. Asterisk Herodotus, our primary source, says no more. She presumably returned to Halicarnassus, ruled her kingdom peacefully, and passed the throne to her son, just as she had always intended. A quiet, successful, and complete life. Asterisk, but history, especially the history written by later men, does not like a quiet, successful, and ruthless woman. It needs a different kind of ending. Asterisk, centuries later, a new legend emerged. A bizarre, romantic tale. It said that Artemisia fell desperately in love with a younger man, Dardanus, who spurned her. Driven mad by unrequited love, this brilliant tactician, this survivor of Salamis, this confidant of a god-king, supposedly traveled to the cliffs of Leucas and threw herself into the sea. A lover's leap to cure her passion. Asterisk, it is a story that feels small, a cliché. A way to reduce the most formidable woman of her age to a familiar, tragic, feminine trope. Asterisk, the one of the spurned, hysterical lover. Welcome back. We have journeyed from the bronze-and salt spray of the Aegean to the rain-soaked jungles of Vietnam. We have seen how history forgets and how it rewrites, how it turns a queen into a lover and a rebel into a shamed virgin. Asterisk now. Our journey takes us to a new land, a place of profound, stark, and terrible beauty. A world of islands, of cherry blossoms, and of sharpened steel. We are going to 12th century Japan. This is the end of the Heian period, a time of exquisite art, of poetry, of courtly manners, and a time of brutal, sudden, and total civil war. It is the beginning of the age of the samurai. Asterisk, it is a world defined by a code of honor, of loyalty, of duty, and of death. It is, perhaps, one of the most rigidly masculine warrior societies the world has ever known. A man's worth was in his sword, his loyalty to his lord, and his willingness to die. Asterisk, a woman's place was ... elsewhere. She was to be a wife, a poet, a mother. She was to be protected. She was ... behind the screen. Asterisk, and yet, in the deep, in the ocean of the past, there is one story that rips the screen to shreds. Asterisk, it is the story of a warrior who was not just forgotten by history, but doubted by it. A figure so extraordinary, so impossible for her time, that later historians and chroniclers simply decided she must be a myth, a literary invention, a figure of speech to make a story more exciting. Asterisk, they preferred to believe she was a fantasy than to accept the truth of her blade. Asterisk, we are listening tonight for the ghost of the Onna-Musha ... the woman warrior. Asterisk, this ... is the story of Tomo Go-san. Asterisk, unlike Artemisia, a queen, or Triu, thou Trin, a rebel. Leader. Tamogosan was not a politician. She was a soldier. Asterisk, she appears in the Hike Monogatari. The Tale of the Hike. This is Japan's great national epic. It is their Iliad, their Odyssey. It is a vast, poetic, and tragic chronicle of the great civil war that tore the country apart, the Jinpei War, fought between the white banner of the Minomata clan and the red banner of the Tira. Asterisk, and in the middle of this epic, in its tales of famous male heroes, of loyalty, and of betrayal, Tamo appears. Asterisk, the tale does not introduce her as an anomaly. It introduces her as a fact. Asterisk, she was a warrior in the service of a specific Lord Minamoto no Yoshina. He was a rough, mountain-raised, brilliant, and ultimately doomed general of the Minamoto clan, and Tomo was his most trusted captain. Asterisk, the hike stops its grand narrative for a moment, just to describe her, and this description has echoed for 900 years. Asterisk, Tomo, the epic says, was especially beautiful, with white skin, long hair, and charming features. She was also a remarkably strong archer, and as a swordswoman, she was a warrior worth 1,000, ready to confront a demon or a god, mounted or on Hef1 Ho Tot double quotes asterisk, it goes on. She was a horsewoman of the most expert kind. She would ride an unbroken wild horse down a sheer precipice. When the battle was to be, Yoshinaka would send her out as his first captain, clad in a magnificent suit of armor, carrying an oversized longsword and a mighty bow. Asterisk, she was, the tale concludes, second to none in valor. Asterisk, this is not the description of a camp follower. This is not a maiden in distress. This is the description of a frontline, elite, samurai commander. Asterisk, and in this world, there was a class of female warriors, the Anabu. They were noble women, trained from birth, not in the heavy armor and long swords of the samurai, but in the naginata long polearm with a curved blade. Their duty was to defend their homes, their castles, their children, when the men were away at war. It was a respected, but defensive, role. Asterisk, this, was not Tomo. Asterisk, Tomo was an Onimusha. She was the offense. She rode into battle with the men. She was a master of the horse, the bow, and the tachi, the long, heavy cavalry sword. She did not defend the castle. She took the castle. And for years, she was unstoppable. She fought at Yoshinaka's side as he cut a bloody swath across Japan, winning battle after battle against the Taira. Her name became a legend. But the Genpei War was a snake eating its own tail. It was a story of betrayal. Yoshinaka's greatest enemy was not the Taira. It was his own cousin Minamuta. No Yura, the man who would, in the end, win the entire war and become the first shogun of Japan. Soritomo was jealous of his cousin's success. He distrusted his barbaric mountain ways. He declared Yoshinaka a traitor to the clan, and sent his two brothers, with an army of 60,000 men, to destroy him. This is where Tomo's story truly begins. At the end, the battle ... was a rout. Yoshinaka's army, worn down from a dozen campaigns, was shattered. He was forced to flee, his once great army reduced to a handful of loyal followers. The end came at the Battle of Owazu, in the year 1184. His banner in tatters was making his last stand on a muddy, frozen pine shore with a river at his back. He had only 300 men. The enemy had 60,000. The battle was a massacre. One by one, his men fell, buying their lord a few more minutes of life. Soon, there were only 5 riders left, including his foster brother, Imai Kanehira, and Tomo goes on. They charged. They scattered the enemy. They regrouped. And then they charged again. Finally, Yoshinaka reined in his horse. He looked at his companions. He knew the end was here. He turned to Tomo, and he told her to leave. The tale of the hike is very clear about his reasoning. It was not to save her. It was not because he was afraid for her. He said to her, "You are a woman. Go, get away from here. I am resolved to die in this battle. It would be a thing of shame, for my last battle, to be seen fighting with a woman." It is a devastating, brutal line. After all she had done, after all the battles she had won for him, ... In his final moment, his honor, his reputation, was more important. His code demanded he die a samurai's death, surrounded by men, Tomoe, ... refused. She wanted to die with him, but he insisted, so ... She turned her horse, but she did not flee, not yet. He wanted to show him, one last time, what kind of warrior he was dismissing. She paused and looked over the battlefield. The enemy was watching. She was looking for a worthy opponent. The hike says, if only a warrior of repute would come now, I would let him see what a fine match I am. At that moment, a famous, powerful enemy captain, a man named Onda no Morsig, recognized her. He led 30 of his best riders, shouting, "There she is, the female warrior. Do not let her escape." Tamo waited. She spurred her horse directly into the center of them. She rode straight for their captain. As he closed, she gripped him with the strength that was ready to confront a demon, and dragged him from his horse. She pulled him across her saddlebow, pinned him against the pommel, and in one swift, terrible motion, she drew her dagger, cut off his head, and threw it on the ground. Then, ... and only then. She discarded her helmet, threw off her heavy armor, and rode away into the eastern provinces. She vanishes. She is never mentioned in the tale of the hike again. Asterisk, like Artemisia. She simply disappears from the record. Asterisk, the story of the warrior is over. But the story of the legend had just begun. Asterisk, later writers, like the Greeks, could not leave this ending alone. They could not accept a woman warrior who simply ... retired. Asterisk, they had to give her an ending. They gave her 3. Asterisk, one legend says she was captured by a man named Wada Yoshimori, an enemy general who was so impressed by her strength that he forced her to become his wife, or his concubine. She bore him a son who, they say, inherited her impossible strength. Asterisk, another, more tragic tale says she did retrieve her lord's head, and then, in her grief, she walked into the sea, drowning herself. A loyal soldier to the end. Asterisk, but there is a third ending. The one that feels, perhaps, the most ... human. Asterisk, this story says that Tomo, Gozen ... survived. She fled just as she was told. She cut her hair. She put away her swords. And she became a Buddhist nun. Asterisk, she lived a long, quiet life, praying for the soul of her lord Yoshinaka, the man who had both made her and dismissed her. In this version, she lived to the age of 91, a life of peace and contemplation, her days of war a distant, thunderous dream. Asterisk, which story is true, we will never know. Asterisk, was she a real person? Or was she, as the academics claim, a composite of the Onobu geisha who fought and died? A literary tool to make the tale of the hike more romantic. Asterisk, does it matter? Asterisk, perhaps. Tamogo-san was forgotten by history, precisely because she became a legend. She became so wrapped in art and poetry and theater that the woman inside the armor disappeared. Asterisk, but her spirit, the idea of her ... could not be erased. She is the truth that even in the most rigid of worlds, in the most hopeless of battles ... there are those who are ready to confront a demon or a god. Asterisk. Asterisk, we have listened to the echoes of forgotten queens, of rebels, and of samurai. We have seen how history rewrites the story